The spoon hits the edge of the cup sharper than it should be. It's cutting through something fragile. The house is quiet now, the kind of quiet that hums after years of not saying what you mean. Have you ever done everything right, only to realize right was just another word for invisible? Because tonight, I'm staring at the empty plates, wondering when being good stopped meaning being whole. And if you've ever felt like being good made you disappear just right, I'm still here. I'll know what you mean. I'm sitting at the dinner table and the plates are almost empty, and Thomas has the volume on the television turned up so loud that I can barely hear myself think. The sound fills every corner of the room like it's a living thing, and it's pushing out all the other sounds. The sound of my voice if I had anything left to say. The sound of my breathing if I was still allowed to take up space with it. My youngest daughter is watching me from across the table, and I see her seeing me, and I almost wish that she wouldn't. I almost wish that I could keep disappearing the way I've been disappearing for so long that sometimes I look in the mirror and I'm surprised to see a face there at all. She leans forward and her voice is so small and so sad, and she asks me something that lands harder than anything her father has ever said to me. She says, "Mom, why are you always so tired?" It's not an accusation. It's not a complaint. It's just an observation from a child who has learned too much too soon about the weight of things. And I don't have an answer for her, because the answer is that I've spent 32 years learning how to disappear, and she has somehow noticed that I'm almost gone. That night, I do something I haven't done in years. I go into my bedroom and I lock the door, and I don't do it to cry. I do it to pray differently. I kneel beside my bed and I don't ask for patience anymore. I don't ask for strength to be a better wife or a better mother or a better servant. I ask for something I haven't asked for since I was young. I ask to feel like a person again. I ask to remember what it felt like to take up space. I ask to come back. I was 23 when I met Thomas at church, and he was 31, and he seemed to know exactly who he was and exactly what he wanted. He wanted me. He told everyone that I was his blessing. He said it with such certainty that I believed him. He said it like I was the answer to a prayer he had been praying his whole life, and I felt chosen. I felt special. I felt like I had finally understood what God wanted from me, and what God wanted was for me to make this man happy. He was educated and he had a good job and he came from a good family, and everyone said I was lucky. My mother cried at my wedding, and she squeezed my hand, and she told me that marriage was sacrifice and that the best wives were the quiet ones who knew how to serve. She told me this like it was a gift she was giving me. She told me this like she had learned it from her own mother and her mother before that, and now she was passing it on to me like it was a precious thing instead of a curse. Thomas courted me very properly. He asked my father for permission. He took me to church and he introduced me to his friends, and he held my hand in public. He was proud of me. During our engagement, he told me about the kind of wife he wanted. He said he wanted someone who understood that a woman's place was in the home, and that a wife's job was to make sure her husband had everything he needed so that he could be successful in the world. He said this like it was an honor. He said this like I should feel grateful for the opportunity to pour myself into someone else's life. I was young and I had been taught that love meant making yourself smaller. Love meant putting someone else's needs before your own. Love meant that your wants didn't matter as much as keeping the peace. So I said yes, and I meant it. I believed that this was what real love looked like. I believed that my purpose was to support someone else's purpose. I believed that if I just worked hard enough and gave enough and served enough, that eventually someone would love me back. The first years of marriage were a blur of mornings that started before dawn. I would wake up and my feet would hit the floor before my eyes were fully open, and I would move through the house like I was part of the machinery of it. Coffee at 6 because Thomas liked his coffee exactly at 6. His shirts ironed the night before because he liked them ready. The children's lunches packed in the order that he preferred. The kitchen cleaned before anyone had breakfast because he said a clean home was a reflection of a clean mind. Every day was the same, and every day I tried to do it better than I had done it the day before. I tried to anticipate what he wanted before he asked for it, because that seemed like the ultimate expression of love. That seemed like the thing that would make him understand that I was worth keeping, that I was the right choice, that I was his blessing in the way he said I was. But nothing was ever quite perfect enough. If dinner was late by 5 minutes, he would mention it. If the house smelled like the candle I liked instead of the one he preferred, he would open a window. If I suggested something at a family gathering, he would listen politely and then do the exact opposite, and everyone would laugh like it was charming how he knew what was best. And I would laugh too because I had learned that laughing made things easier than resisting. When our first child was born, Thomas held him and he wept and he said we were going to raise this son to be strong and responsible and to understand his role as a man. And I looked at my newborn son and I thought about what role I was teaching him by being what I was being. I thought about what I was showing him about how women should be treated. But I didn't say anything because saying things had become dangerous. Saying things meant conflict, and conflict meant he would get quiet, and when he got quiet, I knew I had disappointed him. Our daughter came 2 years later, and when she was born, Thomas held her and he said she needed to learn to be a good woman. He said she needed to understand that her value was in her ability to support the men in her life. He said this to my newborn daughter, and I remember thinking that I wanted to protect her from this, but I didn't know how to protect her from something that I was actively teaching her by example. I was showing her what a good woman looked like. And what a good woman looked like was someone who had disappeared inside her own life. By the time our youngest was born, I had perfected the art of being invisible while being completely necessary. I was everywhere and nowhere. I was essential and unnoticed. I made things run smoothly and no one acknowledged the effort it took. Thomas would come home and he would compliment the meal, and then he would turn on the television and he would not once ask me how my day had been. He would not once wonder if I was tired or sad or struggling or breaking. When I cried, he would tell me that I needed to pray more. When I expressed frustration, he would say I was being ungrateful. When I asked for help with the children, he would remind me that childcare was a wife's responsibility and that if I was overwhelmed, it meant I wasn't praying hard enough. He said these things with such gentleness and such certainty that I began to believe that the problem was not him. The problem was me. The problem was that I wasn't faithful enough or strong enough or devoted enough. Years passed and I stopped keeping track of them because they all started to feel the same. Wake up, serve, clean, pray, sleep, wake up. The world outside continued to happen, but I was not part of it anymore. I had friends once, but Thomas preferred if I didn't spend time with them. He said they distracted me from my duties. He said they filled my head with ideas that weren't helpful. So I stopped calling them, and eventually they stopped calling me, and I told myself that this was fine because my family was all I needed. My children stopped laughing the way they used to laugh. They became careful in how they moved around the house. They learned to be quiet when their father was home. They learned that hugging me in front of him made him uncomfortable. They learned that drawing attention to themselves was dangerous. They learned that the safest thing to do was to be invisible, just like their mother. I watched this happen and I knew it was wrong, but I didn't know how to stop it because I didn't know how to stop being wrong myself. I thought that if I just worked harder and gave more and sacrificed more, that somehow it would be enough to make him happy, and if he was happy, then everyone would be safe. If he was happy, then my children wouldn't have to learn to flinch. If he was happy, then maybe I would finally feel like I mattered. I would lie awake at night and I would try to think of things I hadn't done well enough, things I could improve, angles I hadn't considered. I would replay conversations looking for the moment where I had disappointed him. I would read parenting books and marriage books and self-help books looking for the secret that I was missing, the thing that would make me good enough, the thing that would make me worthy of love without having to earn it every single day by being perfect. My sister tried to talk to me about it once. She asked me if I was happy and I said yes because I had trained myself to say yes to that question automatically. She asked me if I missed my old friends and I said no because I had learned that admitting to missing things was admitting that I wanted something that wasn't allowed. She asked me if I was okay and I said I was blessed because that's what good Christian women said when they were asked if they were okay. They said they were blessed and they smiled and they changed the subject. But I wasn't blessed. I was erased. I was the kind of woman who had become so focused on making everyone else comfortable that I had forgotten what it felt like to be comfortable in my own skin. I had become so good at reading the room and adjusting myself accordingly that I didn't know who I was anymore when I was alone. And the saddest part was that I wasn't even alone because even when no one was watching me, I was still performing. I was still being the Helen that I thought I needed to be. I was still trying to be perfect. I am standing in front of the bathroom mirror and it's early morning and no one else is awake yet, and I am looking at a face that I barely recognize. The eyes are hollow and the skin is gray and there are lines around the mouth from years of holding things in, from years of not saying things, from years of choosing peace over truth. I touch my face and I wonder when exactly I stopped being a person and started being a function. I wonder if anyone would even notice if I just stopped one day. If I stopped making the coffee and ironing the shirts and packing the lunches. If I just sat down and never got back up again, would they notice, or would they eventually just learn to do it themselves and go on living like I never existed at all? It's been 32 years and I have done everything I was supposed to do. I have been a good wife and a good mother and a good Christian and a good servant, and I am still not enough. There is always something more that I should have done. Some way I should have been different. Some version of myself that might have finally made him happy. And the realization hits me like a fist to the chest. The realization that he will never be happy because his happiness is not actually about me. His happiness is about control, and I can't control my way into being enough for someone who doesn't actually want me to be happy. He just wants me to be compliant. For the first time in 3 decades, I say something out loud that I have only been able to think in the silence of my own mind. I say I am so tired. I say it to myself in the mirror like I'm confessing a sin. I say I don't want to do this anymore. I say I don't know who I am. I say these things in a whisper because even now, even when I'm alone, I'm afraid of my own voice being too loud. That night at dinner, I do something small, but it feels enormous. I sit down with my family and I eat my own meal, and I eat it slowly, and I don't apologize for taking my time. Thomas comments that the food is different, and normally I would immediately start explaining myself and apologizing and trying to make it right, but this time I just say yes, I made it differently today, and I ate a bite and I didn't ask him if it was okay. I just ate. My youngest daughter notices. I can see her watching me. She watches me sit at the table with my back straight and my head up, and she watches me take up space for the first time in years. And later that night, she comes to my bedroom and she sits on the edge of my bed and she asks me if I'm okay, and I want to lie to her, but I don't. I tell her that I'm trying to be okay. I tell her that I'm trying to remember who I am. I don't leave Thomas that night or the next night. I don't leave him at all, actually, but something shifts inside me that I can't undo. The shift is small, but it's permanent. I start doing things that I haven't done in years. I start reading books that have nothing to do with being a better wife or a better mother. I start taking walks without telling anyone where I'm going. I start saying no to things that I don't want to do. I start taking up space. I buy a notebook and I start writing in it. Not letters that I hide away, but things that I want to remember. I write about the girl I was before I became a wife. I write about the dreams that I had before I learned to dream only the dreams that Thomas approved of. I write about the books I wanted to read and the places I wanted to go and the kind of woman I wanted to become before I learned that wanting things for myself was selfish. My oldest daughter notices. She says, "Mom, you seem different today," and I say I'm trying to be myself, and she nods like she understands. She has been waiting for me to figure this out. She has been waiting for her mother to come back from wherever I went when I disappeared so many years ago. I find an old photo of myself from before I was married. I'm standing in the sun and I'm smiling, and I look like someone who believed that her life was going to be something. I look like someone who thought she mattered. I look like someone who hadn't yet learned to make herself smaller. I pin that photo on the wall in my bedroom and I look at it every morning, and I tell myself that she's still in here somewhere. That girl, that woman, she's still in here, and maybe it's not too late to bring her back. I don't fight with Thomas and I don't make dramatic announcements. I just slowly start reclaiming the pieces of myself that I had scattered throughout this house like breadcrumbs. I reclaim my voice by speaking up when I have something to say. I reclaim my time by not filling every moment with service. I reclaim my body by not accepting touch that I don't want. I reclaim my mind by reading the books I want to read and thinking the thoughts I want to think. He notices. He comments that I seem distant. He asks if something is wrong. He tries to pull me back into the rhythm of service and sacrifice that I had perfected so well. But this time when he does, I don't automatically bend. This time I hesitate. This time I think about what I want before I think about what he wants. And in that hesitation is the beginning of something that I can't name yet, but that feels like hope. I am not healed. I am not free. I am still married to a man who doesn't see me, and I am still living in a house that feels like a cage. But I am awake now and I can't go back to sleep. I can't unknow what I have come to understand about myself and about the way that I have been living. I can't pretend anymore that this is love. I can't convince myself anymore that sacrifice is the same as devotion. My youngest daughter asks me one night if I'm going to leave her father, and I don't answer right away because I don't know the answer. I don't know if I will leave or if I will stay or if I will find some middle ground between the two. What I do know is that I will not disappear again. What I do know is that I will not erase myself for the sake of keeping the peace. What I do know is that whether I stay or whether I go, I will do it as a person. I will do it as myself. I will do it as Helen. I start with small acts of rebellion that don't look like rebellion at all. I make myself a cup of coffee in the morning and I drink it while it's still hot instead of waiting until everyone else has been served. I leave a book open on the kitchen counter even though I know Thomas doesn't like clutter. I wear a color to the grocery store that he once said didn't suit me. These things are tiny, but they feel massive because each one is a small declaration that my preferences matter, that my comfort is worth something, that I exist separately from my role. My daughter comes home one afternoon and she says, "You look different, Mom." And I say, "What do you mean?" And she says, "You seem lighter somehow. You seem like you're taking up more space." And I realize that this is what it looks like when you stop trying to shrink yourself. This is what it looks like when you decide that your existence is not a burden on other people. This is what it looks like when you finally understand that you don't have to earn the right to breathe. I dig out an old suitcase from the attic and I fill it with things that I had forgotten I owned. A journal from college with dreams written in my own handwriting. A sweater that I loved but had stopped wearing because Thomas said it made me look sloppy. A collection of poems that I had hidden in the back of a drawer. A pair of earrings that my sister gave me years ago that I had taken off and never put back on because he preferred if I wore things that were more modest. I hold these objects in my hands and I feel like I'm collecting pieces of myself that had been scattered throughout this life. Pieces that I had hidden away or forgotten about entirely because I had become so good at prioritizing everyone else's comfort over my own existence. Each object is a memory of a version of myself that I thought I had lost forever. One evening, Thomas comes home and I have made dinner, but I have also made something else for myself. A meal that I actually wanted to eat. Something that he didn't choose. Something that reflected what I wanted and not what I thought he wanted. He looks at his plate and he looks at my plate and he asks me why I made something different, and I say because I wanted to eat this, and he doesn't respond. He just eats his dinner in silence and turns on the television, and I sit at the table with my own meal and I eat it, and I don't apologize. I don't explain. I don't make myself smaller to make him feel bigger. One night I kneel beside my bed like I have done for so many years, but this time the prayer that comes out of me is not what I was taught to pray. This time I don't ask for patience or strength or the ability to be a better wife. This time I ask for courage. I ask for clarity. I ask for the ability to see myself the way that my youngest daughter sees me, with compassion, with recognition, with love. I think about all the years that I spent trying to be perfect, and I think about how perfection was just another cage that I had built for myself. I think about how I had confused love with acceptance of abuse. I think about how I had confused devotion with the erasure of self. I think about how I had taught my children through example that this is what love looks like, and I feel a grief so deep that it almost drowns me. But underneath that grief, there is something else. There is a kind of clarity that I have never felt before. The clarity that it's not too late. The clarity that I can change the story that I have been telling myself about who I am supposed to be. The clarity that I am not responsible for my husband's happiness, and that was never my job. My job was to live. My job was to take up space. My job was to be a person. I remember something that my youngest said to me weeks ago. She said, "Mom, you always look so tired." And I realized that she wasn't criticizing me. She was worried about me. She was watching her mother disappear, and it was breaking her heart. And I understood then that the greatest gift I could give my children was not my sacrifice. It was my wholeness. It was my refusal to disappear. It was me showing them that they didn't have to make themselves small to keep someone else comfortable. I start going to a therapist without telling Thomas. I drive to her office on Tuesday afternoons and I sit in a room with a woman who listens to me without judgment, and I tell her everything. I tell her about the years of service and the constant criticism and the slow erosion of my sense of self. I tell her about the way that I learned to disappear so that my family would be safe. I tell her about the guilt that I feel for not being happy even though I did everything right. And she tells me something that changes the way I see my entire life. She tells me that what I did was not love. What I did was survival. I was trying to survive in a situation where my worth was conditional on my performance, and so I performed until I forgot that there was a person underneath all that performance who deserved to be loved just for existing. Not for what she did or how she looked or how well she served, but just for being alive. I realize now that I was not holding my family together. I was the glue that was holding my family together, but that glue was made of my own pain and my own sacrifice and my own willingness to be less than human so that everyone else could feel comfortable. And the most devastating part of that realization is understanding that my family didn't actually need that glue. They would have been better off if I had never provided it. They would have learned healthier ways to relate to each other if I had not been the buffer between their father and his consequences. I was not protecting my children by staying and suffering in silence. I was teaching them that this is what love looks like. I was teaching them that women should make themselves small. I was teaching them that their comfort doesn't matter. I was teaching them that the price of family is the erasure of self. And I can't undo that, but I can change it going forward. I can show them a different way by being a different way. It was not my family that I was keeping united. It was my pain that everyone was organized around. My pain was the thing that kept us all connected. Because I had become so skilled at absorbing everyone else's needs and discomfort that we never had to actually deal with anything. We never had to have hard conversations. We never had to acknowledge that something was wrong. We never had to confront the fact that love was not actually in this house. What was in this house was duty and obligation and fear and the slow suffocation of everyone's authentic selves. I don't know what comes next. I don't know if I will stay with Thomas or if I will find the courage to leave. I don't know if my children will forgive me for showing them that I'm human or if they will eventually understand that this is a gift. I don't know if I will find a version of happiness or if happiness is something that I stopped believing in a long time ago. What I do know is that I'm not disappearing anymore. What I do know is that I'm awake and I can't go back to sleep. I'm writing this down because someone out there is doing what I did. Someone is making themselves smaller every single day. Someone is praying for patience when what they actually need is permission to leave. Someone is being told that their sacrifice is love when what it actually is the price of staying. Someone is learning to disappear, and I want to tell her that it's not too late. I want to tell her that she deserves to exist. I want to tell her that being imperfect is better than being perfect in a cage. How many women do you know who have given so much of themselves that they forgot what it felt like to belong to themselves? How many women do you know who have sacrificed everything and still been told that it wasn't enough? How many women do you know who are slowly disappearing inside their own lives and calling it love? This is not a love story. This is a story about learning the difference between love and survival. This is a story about understanding that real love does not require the destruction of self. Real love asks you to be whole. Real love celebrates your existence. Real love doesn't require your disappearance. Maybe it's time to stop being the glue that holds everything together and start being the person who deserves to be held. Because that's how healing really begins, when someone finally sees you and you realize you were never meant to be less so someone else could feel more. If this story found you at the right moment, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who might need it tonight and tell me where you're watching from in the comments. Like, subscribe, and let's keep reminding each other we were never meant to disappear to be loved.